Today we're going to be talking about special teams. We're going to be going through the basics of what I like to do in each of the different special teams. Not going far in depth on any of them, but just ideas on what have been the things that I've tried, the things that I've done, and the things that have really worked with the teams that I've coached in the special teams area. We spend most of our time talking offense and defense. I do get a lot of questions about special teams here and there. And so what I'm going to talk about is not only the special teams that I like to run, but where you can learn more about them, because honestly, it's just not what I do. I don't do a lot of teaching of special teams. So you'll find out where you can learn more about them as well. Be sure if this is your first time watching the channel that you go ahead and subscribe down below so you don't miss any future videos, and also give this video a like if it's something that's going to help your football team out. So the first one is the punt, and for me, it's the shield punt. I really like the way that the shield punt, the spread punt, whatever you want to call it. I really like the way that it has worked for us. I like the all that we've gotten out of it, and it has been, of all of the different things that we've done on a punt team, I can just say that consistently, it has been the best for us. I mean, I can't think of anything else that we've done, and not that every other punt's been a disaster or that this is some way, the only way to do things. But for me, we've done a lot of different stuff, and it's been great. So where do you learn the shield punt, and what is the shield punt? So first of all, we're spread up front, and I'm like blanking on the details, and the book is over my head. So I'm going to tell you where to get all the details, but essentially we're a spread punt. I believe we're 3 yards apart up front, 3 yards apart. It's not as wide as I've done in some different places, but spread across the front, wide splits up front. It's not all the way across the field. They're not 8-yard splits or something. It's a pretty reasonable split. 7 yards back, you have the shield. Okay, and the shield is three bigger guys who can be back there, who are going to block. Basically, they're the only ones blocking. So up front, nobody is blocking. It's only these three guys that are actually really blocking anyone. And then the punter. Now, since we're doing a catch-all special teams episode, let me just mention a couple of things. As far as punters, I'm terrible. I'm the worst person to ask. I've been fortunate to have somebody around who kind of understands punters. If you don't know anything about coaching the punt, like me, it's one of those things that I've always wanted to learn more about. Play with my zipper here. It's probably going to pick everything, be all over the audio. It's one of those things that I don't know anything about, and I always say, like, this offseason I'm going to learn punting. And I've been to a couple of clinic talks, but that wasn't enough for me to consider myself like, hey, I know how to coach punters. So if you're like me and that's the case, I would definitely look for some camps or somewhere to send your punter off to, especially if he's not really a punter. Like, you got a guy who's just a position guy, a good athlete. Usually we end up like, hey, you guys go over there and punt. We find the guy who can punt the best, who get the ball down the field. If you have a couple of guys who are evenly matched, pick the most athletic, because if things break down, he can help you out. So the keys here, we're not blocking anyone in the A gaps. We are getting out across the face of anybody to our outside. So they are responsible for basically running through the face of anyone to their outside. And actually the very outside guys are the gunners, and they're just going. Now, I'm saying all of this off the top of my head, so if there's something that I say that conflicts with the resource that I give you, go with the resource. The resource is simply this: coach4.org, and I will link in the show notes. You can find Coach 4 at Coach 4 on Twitter. He's part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. At Coach 4 on Twitter, Fore, Chris 4 is where you will find Chris 4 at there. The book may be on It may be on Coach's Choice. I'm not. Yeah, I think it's on Coach's Choice. But go to coach4.org or excuse me, 8laces.org or coach4.org. Coach4.org. You should click at the shield punt at the top. That's how I got to it. It is, one of the things he says on here is he's punted the ball 440 times, had only 3 blocked and only 1 touchdown returned. So out of 440, that's pretty good. Obviously, that's pretty impressive. So I can say that we never had. Our spray punts. Luckily, we didn't have to punt a ton. Punts weren't always great, but it's basic. We have to, you have to move guys in and out and all that sort of stuff. And it was extremely. And actually, I've got it drawn up wrong here. He's actually gonna be here and step in to create the shield. This is the best thing that I've found. Simple teaching. And Coach 4 in The Shield Punt is the name of the book. It's a book. The Shield Punt, and it has lots of links to video in it as well. The Shield Punt is by far easily the best resource. And I'd show it to you, but the book's way up there. The best resource that I've found on coaching the punt team. So strongly, strongly, strongly recommend it. I've done other things. We've done a pro style punt. We've done some different versions of the spread. Chris does have some fakes in this that you can check out, which a lot of times I've heard, hey, you go to this style of punt, there are no fakes. I definitely think you can fake it. Some things that I really like some of the rugby style stuff, but again, this was simple. So the key for me is we ran this in 2018. I met Chris, got to know Chris. We might have been running it. I take that. No, we started running it. I can't remember if we ran it in 2017 as well. We may have run it for 2 years. I'm just thinking of when I got all this detail from Chris. I think it was 2017 because I think it was in. I'd have to look, but the fact is this. Our punt team was excellent. I got sidetracked when the first thing I was going to talk about. You need a good long snapper. Okay. If I can recommend anything to you, send your punter. So I was talking about sending your punter to a camp. I recommend that you send your long snapper. You find a camp with Rubio. Okay. Rubio long snapping. And again, I'll get that link in the show notes. I need to start making a list of the links. If you don't have a Rubio long snapping camp coming near you, it is a little pricey. Okay, it is several $100s, but it's an 8-hour. This is not a bullcrap camp. Okay, this is not a BS. Send your guy, and they're gonna screw around for 8 hours, tell him he's great, blow his head up. If you don't know how to coach long snapping, you can't do it. Period. Now, you can learn it. So I basically parlayed that into, we paid, this was years ago. I've sent 3 or 4 long snappers. 4 long snappers that we've sent to Rubio. So 4 different long snappers that we've sent to Rubio. And 2 of them all of them became good, solid long snappers. A couple of them became really, really good long snappers. Maybe it's 3. Maybe it's 3 have been to them. One of them I remember we sent down there, and he couldn't snap. We didn't have a long snapper. This kid kind of was the best of the bunch when we just lined up everybody and said, okay, figure it out. But within a day at Rubio, with the 1 day at Rubio, he went from very bad to a very solid long snapper for us. The one that we sent most recently went a few times to see Rubio, and he ended up getting a preferred walk-on at Virginia Tech. So pretty good. Now there's some genetics involved in that, but he's also a hell of a good long snapper. I don't care what punt you run, you need a good long snapper, and it will make all the difference. If your snaps are those rainbow-looking snaps, that's garbage. And a kid can learn to long snap, but you need a coach for him. Rubio's the best. So I frame it as, if we can't, the first year I learned all the drills because I went down there and I watched Rubio teach it. So I can coach a long snapper, ish. Like, I can get the ball where it needs to go, but like it's not nearly as good as spending a day with Rubio. So strongly recommend that. He's been on the podcast years and years ago, like episode 20 or something like that. So you can search for Rubio, Rubio, on the search box on JoeDanielFootball.com. I forgot my own website. So check that out. You need a good long snapper, and you need a guy who's throwing bullets to 14 yards. Because if you don't have a snapper who can get it back there quickly at 14 yards and get it back there on the spot, a lot of times if you're getting punts blocked, it's not because the system that you're running isn't good. It's because you can't line your punter up at 14 yards and snap the ball directly to his hip. And you need that. You don't need lightning fast times. You need the ball to be a good time and be on his hip, right? You need him to catch it and kick it. If he's taking a bunch of steps, that's a problem too, so make sure that you get your punter straight as well. Like, I don't care. Punt returners in high school, a lot of times are so, you can just kick it away from them. But what I like about the spread above anything else is because we're not engaging in a block and waiting for the ball to be kicked. You will, if you have a decent punter, you will be surrounding the football or the returner when the ball lands. So there is no opportunity for a return, really. And a lot of kids will get nervous, but they're not good at calling fair catches because they don't get a lot of good punts in the air, and they will try to catch it and return it. And you will create, by having that pressure down there, you will create some live ball situations, some turnovers. So I love that about the Shield punt. Chris Four, coach4.org to get that, or 8laces.org. Just go to coach4.org. I think it's easier. Fore, and Rubio long snapping. I can't recommend a punting guru because I don't know. If you got one, maybe you can send me their name. Twitter @footballinfo, and send me, maybe tag him or something like that. Give him a little love. But I don't have one to recommend because, like I said, I've just been lucky to have somebody around who knew how to coach it. And I can tell you, when I've had somebody who really knew how to coach it, it's a massive difference. And I recommend, like I said, I've just been lucky. I recommend you get somebody who can coach it up. That's going to really be good for you. On the punt return side of things, this is one where I've always gone back and forth. And usually, for most of my career, basically what I've done is one of two things. Either line up and play defense, or draw up a return that would attack what I perceived as a weakness in that punt. What I found was we were spending a lot of time on that, and I don't know if we were getting any more blocks than we would otherwise get. So basically, the punt return that we've been running comes from Lou Johnston. Coach Johnson has a video that is on Championship Productions, and I will, again, link that in the show notes. And I'm just going to pull it up so I can tell you about it. Coach Johnson's video is all of the special teams, and actually when I first, I was fortunate to be able to go down and meet Coach Johnson at his house, and we sat down and we talked about a lot of offensive stuff, some defensive stuff, and then we ended up getting on to the special team. So Coach Johnson has a video that is on, how does this only have 3.5 stars? The DVD is too long. I mean, that's a review. The disappointing part was there were video examples of punt return, and none of them showed it going according to plan. Yeah, punt return never goes according to plan. So I'll agree with that. I like the punt return. What I'll recommend to you on punt return is that you pick something and you run it. So Coach Johnston's video on what we did was we took the punt return. We actually took the punt return. We took the kickoff and we took the kickoff return. So this is going to be in two places. I ended up going away from the kickoff later, but I've gone specifically with the punt return and the kickoff return 100%. So it's called Put the Special in Special Teams by Being Unconventional, and it's by Coach Lou Johnston. And Coach Johnston's video is very good, despite what some of these folks have written. I strongly recommend it. What we did, and the basics of it are that we're going to have 11 guys. And we are going to have a rush side and a wall side. Okay, so basically a rush side and a wall side. And the positions don't really matter, who you are. We use a separate team for it. It has two returners back deep, so that's kind of the feature of it, I would say. The other thing is, and I can show a video of it working perfectly according to plan. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and a linebacker. So basically what we end up with is we've got guys out on the gunners, so corners out on the gunners, right? They're going to be blocking them. I mean, it's your normal, how you handle your gunners. On the block side, they're coming to pressure. So we've got 3 guys that are coming to pressure, and we always bring the pressure from the same side, from the right side. If we got enough punt returns to where people were like, oh, we know what they're going to do, we're going to kick away from it, we'd worry about it. But because so many punts are just not very good, or things just kind of fall apart, you never really get the proper execution of it. Very rarely. That's just the nature of punt return. To me, that's just the nature of the way that things go. So what we do with the wall side is you have 4 guys that are going to be in the wall. So the first guy is your end on the left side. He's going to block whoever that tight end wing is. He's going to engage and block that guy until he hears the ball being kicked. Then he's going to run and sprint out and down the numbers, and he's going to come up to a spot just in front of where the kick is landing, and he's going to set up the wall at the top of the numbers. The second guy on the kick is going to follow him. So they end up running in a wall, and he's going to set up the wall there. The third guy comes out, follows him, sets up the wall. And then the Mike backer, that you have one middle linebacker who's basically over top of the center. He is just going to get into the wall. I tell him if that long snapper is really chugging down and snap and go, and he's just sprinting, get a little shot on him just to give us an extra second before those guys get down there, and that'll help us out. And then he is going to get and be the last man into the wall. I don't know, maybe he should just block the long snapper. We could play with it. But the key is one of their 2 guys back there. And I really think having 2 guys back, because of the distribution of kicks that we get in high school, they're all over the place. Because of that distribution of kicks, having the 2 guys back there, and you know how far they're going to kick the ball and get a punt off to you. Because of the distribution of kicks, I want to have 2 guys back there so that we can cover that ground. They're basically on the hashes, so not right next to each other. When the ball is kicked, one of them is catching it, obviously, either the left or the right returner, and they're about as deep as we think they need to be. The right returner will always end up with the ball. Okay, the right returner will always end up with the ball. And so if the left returner catches it, he will hand off the ball behind him. Okay, and so he will always hand off the ball. The left returner will catch it. Let's say he catches it at the hash. He is going to start running toward the right returner. The right returner is running towards him. Okay, and the left returner hands the ball off behind to disguise it a little bit to the right returner. They don't need to be flying. We've had problems with exchanges back here because these are two punt returners, not a running back and a kick return and a quarterback. So they don't need to be flying. He just hands it behind him. Okay, he can kind of slow down and just get it to him, and then the right returner takes it, and he is getting into the wall. If the right returner catches it, then he will be in front, and he will fake the handoff to the left returner behind him. Okay, so if the right returner catches it, he is again going to keep the ball, but in that case, he is going to go in front, and the left returner will go behind, and we will have a faked handoff, and the left returner faking, always coming out of the fake as if he's got the ball and running to the block side, which is to our right side, and the right returner always ending up returning it. If things break down, if they don't look good, get what you can get. And I do tell the left returner after a little while that if we see a team, especially if we see a team, we punt once early or we punt return once early, and they're really just not even, maybe they've got their bead on it, they know what's happening, and they've decided they're just going to completely sprint into the wall, then I can tell the left returner, hey, on this one, if it looks open, keep it. If it looks like they've just totally vacated the right side of the field, then you can keep it. But again, punts are so spray in high school. It's so rare, at least in our area, it's so rare to see, week after week of punters who are putting that ball, 35, 40 yards up in the air, giving you a chance to really set up the return, that a lot of times you just catch it and get what you can get, or we can't even get to it to catch it. But I have seen it work. It does work. We've gotten into the wall. And in fact, the funny thing about it is a couple of years ago when we first started running it, we worked it. And I had one of the coaches who was like, this is a waste of time. It's never going to work. We should just, block up front, get what we can get kind of thing instead of trying to do this. And we ended up somewhere along the way getting the perfect punt return, getting into the wall, and returning it. So I like this return. I don't care what you do on return, but what I used to do, which was every single week, like putting in a new punt return, that was a waste of time. And here's why. Punt return at the high school level in general is a cluster because the punts are bad. So maybe your answer is to just go block it. Like I said, we get a return here and there, and when we do get it set up, it's good. So maybe your return, maybe you decide to just go get it. You can do that. I'm not teaching this return to you. I'm telling you, if you want to do this, you need to get the video from Championship Productions from Coach Johnson. This is his deal. But I like it. The critical thing here is, number one, get somebody who will catch the daggone punt. Don't let it bounce. Don't let it roll. Catch it. Get somebody who's got some huevos back there who will go catch it. Because the lost yardage, the hidden yardage in that ball rolling, 70-yard punts from a kid who line drives it, right? It should have been housed. That's why we have two returners back there. I don't want that ball to roll. Okay? I don't want that ball to roll. I don't want to give a kid who can only punt it 30 yards an opportunity to boot a 55-yarder because we let it roll. Get a kid who will go get it, catch it, return it. Try something. Number one. And who's smart enough to know when you get away. Okay? Number two, make sure you've got some kind of pressure because of the likelihood of bad snaps. I would always have at least a couple guys pressuring. I do not believe that in high school, unless you, we played, this was how I learned about Rubio long snapping. We played against a Rubio kid who ended up snapping, I think, at Rutgers. And I said, first of all, their offense was outrageous. And so I think he snapped like 9 times in a game. But I'd seen him snap at the Rubio camp. So I was like, we're not rushing this guy. Guess what that kid did? The one time in his life, he bounced a snap back there. We had no pressure on him. So I was about to say, I understand not putting pressure when you know it's going to be a good snap. High school kids do high school kid things. Have somebody pressuring. And even if they got a stud long snapper, they got a punter back there, right? So, and if that punter is a good athlete, you better have somebody pressuring him so he can't just stand back there. Always have somebody pressuring. But the big thing is this. Run the same thing every week. Or the same basic concept at least. Because the punts are such a cluster that you're not using, it's not a valuable use of practice time, in my opinion, which on this podcast is always right. It's not a valuable use. If you're running a 90-minute practice plan, it's definitely not a valuable use of your time to put in a new punt return every single week. You're better off just playing defense and putting one guy back there to keep it from rolling. That's what I'd be thinking about. Okay, the next one is going to be kickoff return. Okay, kickoff return is again coming from Coach Lou Johnson, and you can check it out in that same video that I mentioned already. Kickoff return. This is weird. So you've got your guys there. What we do is a cross up front from Coach Johnson, a cross up front, and a wedge second line. One of the things that I love about what Coach Johnson did in that video is he put in a spot for a kid who's a great kid, a program guy, who you want to have a role. You need those kids. You want to have those kids. You got to find a role for them. They're not starters. They're not necessarily great football players, but they come to the weight room every day. They're just great kids. And these guys are actually a little bit wider. They're great kids. You want to have that guy out there for you. So I strongly recommend that you check this out. This has been a good one for us. We've had some returns on it. And we've done wedge, and I've done really complicated stuff. That's not, I don't recommend that. But we've done, just a wedge, simple wedge, and I think that's 90% effective. What I liked about Coach Johnson's design was that front wall was never getting back to create a real wedge. Okay. They just, and again, the more not getting these deep, long kickoffs we get, the more that wedge is just never happening. We see more and more squibs, skies. We see more and more of these, shorter kicks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's 5, 2, 2, 2. Okay. 5 guys up front, relatively close. They're inside the numbers, and you think that you're very onside vulnerable. I found that this actually is not terribly onside vulnerable, excuse me. So because of where we put the second line is like 10 yards behind. So they're around the first line is at the 48 yard line. So they're not right on the line. The second line is at like the 40. So just a little bit behind them. Maybe if it's an onside situation, I'll bump them up 5 yards. But they're in a position where they can defend against the onside. They've got to check to make sure that the onside is that it's not an onside. But then they're going to be getting into the wall. Okay, so the first guy is responsible for the kicker. He doesn't go chase him. He doesn't attack him. If the kicker just stands there, the middle guy, if the kicker just stands there, then he's going to block him if the kicker comes running to make the tackle. Okay, because he can't go headhunt the kicker. So that's why it's great, because he's only getting involved if he needs to block the kicker, and that's really only going to be when the return breaks, right? So he gets to make the touchdown block. It's a great situation for you to handle those guys. Then we go up there and we count. And I haven't run it in a little bit. So we count I believe we count the the 6, and then the 5 and the 4 are going to be missing one guy. I'll put him out here. Okay, the 5 and the 4 are going to be the guys that we block with the front line, and then the back line is going to block is going to wedge. Okay, so these guys sprint back after they make sure it's not a onside. The right guard gets the 4, the second guy over from the kicker. The right tackle gets the 5, the guy next to the kicker on the opposite side. So they're crossing the field. So they sprint back at an angle, and then they sprint across the field at the 40-yard line. The left side sprints back at an angle, and they get across at the 40. We say the 40. What we say is that the first line has got to cross, or the right side has got to cross one line, the left side has got to cross 2 lines. They don't need to get all the way to the line. We want to make sure they get across. And they're just going to kick out those guys. Okay, so they're going to come back at an angle, and they're going to kick out the guys that are on the opposite side for them. Okay, so they're going to kick those guys out. And that's going to open up the middle of the field. You have the left returner and the right returner back there, ideally. One of them is going to catch the football. If it's short, you have the next 2 guys that can they can do something with it. But they're going to basically sprint back to 7 yards from where the ball is kicked. They're going to be on the left hash or the right hash if it's outside of the hash, or in front of the returner. Okay, but no further than the hash. They're going to sprint back to where that ball is kicked, or where that returner is, 7 yards from him. They're going to set up, and they're going to set up the wall. The outside guys that are at the 40, they're going to set up the wall too. The other returner, he's going to fall into the wall, and that guy's going to get the ball. He's going to get it set up. He's going to let the wall form, and then he says go, and the wall turns up the field. Okay, so it's a cross in the front, and it is a wall in the second line. I think this is a very good return. And again, we do the same thing. Okay, we do the same thing. Because of the amount of sky kicks and other things, so you want to make sure that everybody's trained to fair catch. Your what Coach Johnson calls the big heavies, the guys that are setting your wall. Those are like athletic big men. Okay, athletic big men are who you want in your heavies. If you got teams that just want to kick it short on you, you just flip them, right? Okay, all right. Well, we would just have a second unit of heavies, and they would be not so heavies. Like for example, I had a pretty athletic defensive end that was a big heavy. When teams stopped wanting to kick it deep because the kid in the back was all state, they would try to kick it to those front guys. We had a tailback who was just a hammer. He's not your typical punt returner or kick returner because he didn't have burning speed, blazing speed, but he was gonna get yardage, and he had good hands. So he was the next guy, and we knew that like if the heavies are catching it, there's no wall in front of them, right? They've just got the cross blocks from the guys up front, so they may not get a lot of protection. So I want to have a hammer returning that. And so he was our second guy. He wasn't the guy who wanted setting the wall because he was, 155 pounds, but he was, extremely tough and physical kid. So that might be your second group. We would just bring them in. You want your ends, the guys that are your second line, you want them to be good hands guys, smart, fair catch guys. And they need to be fast because they've got to be able to get back into the wall. So if you've got receivers / DBs who aren't your returners, that's where I'd put them. So like your second and third guys. I'd have the guys who you probably might want to put on the front wall. There's not really a place for offensive linemen in this, okay? Maybe your middle guy. But there's not really a place for putting 5 fat guys up front. That's an old school way of doing kickoff return. It's too easy to just beam a ball off their face, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I want 5 athletes up front is my preference. So the last of the big four is the kickoff. And the resource that I'm going to give you here is Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly has a video, I believe Coach's Choice. Kevin Kelly has a video on onside kicks. And I cannot recommend to you enough. I mean, I'm sure, look, the video itself, which I did purchase, and I just want to make sure that I'm giving you the right website. Okay, it is actually on Championship Productions as well, so we will link that as well. It's called Gaining Possessions Using the Onside Kick. Again, the ratings on these videos are insane. Insane. Who gave this a 1? Who gave this a 1? Ludicrous. Ludicrous. A 2. Good info. Gave it a 2 out of 5. Are you a football coach or are you looking for movies? Ludicrous. Does the video have good information? Production value on your football coaching videos. Get out of here. Anyway, don't pay attention to the review. Read the reviews. And if they're ridiculous, ignore them. Kevin Kelly, gaining possessions using the onside kick. I became a believer in the onside kick. We were using Lou Johnson's sky punt, or sky kickoff. We couldn't tackle the freaking guy with the ball. Just screw it. They're returning it to the 50 every single time, and then breaking half of them. I don't know why we couldn't tackle. We just couldn't. Maybe it's because I'm not going to spend 20 minutes a day on kickoff. So that's another argument. 90-minute practice plan, do onside kicks. I don't have that amount of time. And we were getting regularly 1 to 3 recoveries a game. Yes, possessions were starting at the 50. They were. When we were sky kicking, now I didn't have a kid, so let me say this. If you've got a kid who can boot it into the end zone, boot it into the end zone. I think personally, if you know that he's going to consistently put that ball 5 yards deep in the end zone, then you can line up a kickoff team and you can start every single possession with a touchback. That's fantastic. Because I don't have to work kickoff very much. Just, hey, make sure that kid boots in the end zone. Y'all jog down there behind it. Make it look good. I want to see a good 30-yard sprint before it lands in the end zone. But I don't have the time to teach ridiculous amounts of stuff. Kids understand, get on the football. We teach them the rules. And Coach Kelly in the videos does a great job of telling you the rules that your kids must understand if you are going to run an onside kick. For weeks and weeks and weeks, I cannot even count how many times we lined up and kicked onside kicks and teams were stunned. This is all that we've done on film, and you're still lining up and doing your same thing. I talked to, we lost the game, but I talked to the coach whose team we were 10-2 that year, and one of the teams that we lost to went on to the state championship game, lost in the state championship. They beat the other team in the region championship that we lost it. Okay. And I talked to him at the end of the season, and he said, for some reason, we didn't onside kick against him, and this was a fault of my own. Not believing in what we were doing and who we were. Because I just thought, well, they're really good. They're going to be ready for it. And I talked to him after the season. He said, we spent 20 minutes a day preparing for that onside kick. I've won the battle of special teams right there. Because I'm just doing what I always do, and you're spending 20 minutes to get ready for it. Just like when we use the single wing and the 2-point conversion. You can check out the podcast on the single wing. Just like that, and the YouTube video. Just like doing that, that's all we do. We've been doing it since day one. You're spending 20 minutes a day, an hour or more of your practice that you are investing on something that we are just doing as a no thought autopilot. So we onside kick it. We just call long onside. It's got to get to the 50. Long onside is just your normal traditional onside kick. Your kicker doesn't have to do anything but work on these. Like literally our kid, after 3 or 4 games when we put in the onside kick, he was horrific kicking it deep. He didn't have a big leg. He was a great extra point kid. He didn't have a big leg, though. He struggled just to get the height and the distance on the sky kicks that we needed. But he was a great kid, and he loved doing these. And he went from being the kid that people were like, he shouldn't be the kicker. He can't kick deep enough. You need to fire him. I hate people who want to make personnel decisions about your team. Shut up. To, man, he's so great because he kicks these funky onside kicks. Because he was a kicker. I'd be like, go work on some tricks, man. If you make the ball, see if you can make the ball do something funny. And he'd be like, yeah, I was trying this thing. I mean, we did drop kicks. We never did it in a game. I wish I'd done it at least one game just to have it on film. But we worked on drop kicking it. We worked on the best one was and this was actually from Lou Johnson, cat and mouse. Okay, this is one that we put in even before we started onside kicking all the time, which is where the kicker just dribbles the ball straight ahead, and we just try to get on it, right? He kicks it straight ahead, kicks it to the soft spot in front of him, and really it's designed for the kicker to be the one that gets on it because he just dribbles it down and he chases it down, and everybody else is coming with him. We kick long onsides. We could kick short onsides. He learned how to kick it over to the right side if he needed to. We just had to adjust his alignment. We didn't have to adjust, his he had to kick with his left foot or something like that. I told him just move your alignment, just line up so you can kick it to the right side because we're normally long onside left. He can long onside both ways, but we're mostly long onside left, I think. And then just a couple tricks here and there, laying the ball down on its side and kicking it. Just some different things that we could do. Found that the ball really dies in the water on really heavy rain games, so we had to make some adjustments there. But I mean, we played one team that wasn't really good at football, but was really good at baseball. They put like 5 shortstops up there. That onside kick was dead in the water. It did not work well against them, but lesson learned. Strongly recommend it. Onside every time. Would we kick it deep? I mean, we got up sometimes, we're running clock. I'm not onsiding it anymore. But this kid, every single time, when we would tell him to kick it deep, the first deep kick, he would just miss it because he never did it anymore. And he would just kick the most beautiful, bouncing onside kick or something like that. And we recovered more than one with a running clock. And I would scream at that kid, "What are you doing to me? What are you doing?" I mean, I'm not screaming at him, but I'm like, "What are you doing to me?" No opposing coach ever believed me when I'd be like, "Dude, I did not tell him to do that." They were just pissed off. People are going to be pissed off at you if you do this. They're going to hate you because it works. They hate it. So just beware of that. Beware of that. But again, very minimal practice time. It's a lot easier to fall on the ball, get fetal position, have everybody fall on top of him. Teach the rules, and then just keep doing it. Practice time, valuable practice time. Okay, the last two, the kickoff and the kick return, or no, kickoff, the PAT field goal and the PAT field goal block. These are a little simpler, so I'm just going to run through them real quick. PAT field goal. Get a kid who can kick consistent leg swing, get a long snapper who can get a consistent snap, get a holder who can get the ball down, and then have your linemen, your 6 linemen step down hard, right? They just step down hard, close off the inside gap. There's not a lot to it. I think we overcomplicate this. We just step down, protect the ribs, that kind of thing. It's pretty basic. You just cannot open anything up there. You cannot open anything up. I have started letting them shoot their hands rather than, we used to have them like do the forearm thing or whatever. I can't remember how it went. Put their head down on the hip. I have started letting them just basically like blocking an inside gap. But I always want them to step hard to the inside, step their inside foot in front of the next inside foot, and then block really hard. The guards will hook with the heel of the long snapper. Obviously, nobody should be coming over top of the long snapper. And then get long arm guys on your wings and teach them to protect the inside gap and just use their length to protect the outside gap, okay? But always never open up the inside gap, and be long and make that outside guy and just be at an angle to make yourself as long as you possibly can so that we make sure we get it off. On the field goal block, this is the one. I always bring the same fast kid, usually off of the right side edge, our right side edge. And then I let the other interior lineman rush. I take the right side. I do not rush. Do not bring guys off of both edges. That is dumb. Because if you have guys off of both edges lay out, somebody's breaking their neck. Do not let guys come off both edges. Do not let guys come off both edges. Do not let guys come off both edges. I see it all the time. It's ridiculous. Do not let guys come off both edges. Think about it. If they both get in the right spot and they lay out, you need an ambulance. It's ridiculous. I will let the interior, basically a B-gap rusher on the away from the block side. Usually the block side is the right. We can check it to block from the left if we decide to. And it will depend on one thing. On whichever side, and if I don't see somebody really, really stands out, then it's just going to be the right side. On whichever side we see a weakness, whether that is a kid who's not very good or a kid who is opening up a door, on whichever side, we will put the hammer over top of him. Okay, and basically the hammer is I'm going to put 3 kids over top of that guy. And I've done it with 3 and I've done it with 2. But I'm going to put my best big man rushers, at least 2, if not 3, over top, inside shoulder and outside shoulder, of that weak link. And we are going to run him over. And the third guy is there for if they run him over, he's bringing the rush behind them, hoping to get through the inside gap. So we're just going to blow that guy up. So 2 guys are blowing that guy up. A third guy is running behind him. A 4th rusher is coming off of the edge. And then you should have 4 guys at least available for coverage. Okay, at least 4 guys available for coverage. So field goal block, that's the only one that changes from week to week. And all it does is we go into the Monday meeting and we say, okay, we've identified their left guard as the weak link. And then that's the guy that we hammer. Okay, so that's it for PAT block. And that's been successful. We've got a number of blocks. And be sure to check out some of my other videos, including other videos from this podcast. And I've got a lot of other great coaching videos on this channel that you can check out that are shown down below here. Also, if you want to subscribe, make sure you don't miss any future videos. Just click on the logo on the top left of the screen.